Hey everybody, well, happy Monday. I am back on. So, Monday mornings, things happen. So, I'm coming on live and I'm really excited to have this conversation. So, it was going to be at 9 a.m. We had times, actually, you know what? Thank you for joining everybody. I'm excited that you're all coming on. We just had a little bit of a time glitch there. I've got Hannah Oertel coming on. She should be joining here in a minute. Very excited to talk with her about delaying cell phones. We're going to give this one more shot this morning. It's Monday morning. Thank you everybody for joining. I am Amy Schmidt. I am the founder of Fearlessly Facing 50, which I launched right before I turned 50 years ago. And I have written a book. I'm a podcast host. I'm a TEDx speaker. And most importantly, I really want to encourage people to connect more, to move the needle on where they are in their journey. And so we're going to give this one more try. I'm waiting for Hannah to join from Delay Cell Phones. And we're going to be talking about how we are going through the world right now, actually feeling more lonely than ever. We're connecting in a virtual world and we're very disconnected as people. So this is going to be a great conversation. So she should be jumping on in a minute. We're giving it one more try. Thank you all for joining and being patient this morning. It is one of those things, and Monday mornings happen. So it is what it is. So once again, I'm Amy Schmidt. Today we're going to be digging into a great topic about cell phone use and how it's linked to the mental health issues of anxiety, of all sorts of things with our kids. What can we do as parents to support them, or grandparents to support our grandkids in this area? We know that we are living very much in a virtual world. We are connecting with people all over the world, and we're really not having those relationships we used to have. We're getting rid of playtime. 10 years ago, the kids played more, and now they are on their cell phones more. So that's where we are. So once again, I'm just going to wait for Hannah to join. She just emailed me, so she should be on here in a second. So thanks for joining and thanks for being patient. Once again, Monday mornings happen, and this is just sometimes how we have to roll with it. So we're going to talk this morning. I don't know if any of you, please put below in the comments or give a little emoji if you have read John Haidt's new book called Anxious Generation. It is a book that everybody should have on their bookshelf. It is amazing, whether you have kids or not, whether you have grandkids, whether you are a young adult, whether you are somebody going through life right now with one of these great cell phones, which I would pick up, but I'm using it right now for my Instagram Live. We are so connected to them. So how are we building relationships outside of cell phone use, and what is the real impact that they are having on our kids? So once again, we're giving this a second try. Second try is usually, third try is a charm. Second try, hopefully Hannah will be joining. She texted a minute ago, so she should be jumping on here. All right, we'll try this one more time. I'm just going to email her and let her know. All right. So thanks again for joining. I know everybody's time is very valuable, and I don't want to waste anyone's time this morning. And this is going to be one of those topics that I know is very interesting to a lot of people, whether you're a parent, whether you are a young adult, whether you are a grandparent, wherever you are in your life journey. So let's give her another minute to jump on, and we will get rolling with this conversation. One thing that I thought was really interesting that John pointed out in his book is that we have overprotected in regular real life and underprotected in a virtual world. All right, so we've got Delay smartphones on here. Go ahead and Hannah, go ahead and ask to join, and I will invite you into this conversation so we can get this started and make this 30 minutes very valuable and very insightful for those that have jumped on. So I see that Hannah has joined here, but I'm just waiting for her to. Here we go. All right, here we go. And here we go. Okay, she should be joining, and we are. All right.
Hi.
There you are.
Managed it, sorry.
That's okay. I totally understand. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're just going to get rolling with this, Hannah. I know, big time difference here in Scotland, right?
Yeah, that's right. I just, I'm not the best with the time difference. My brother lives in the US as well. You think I'd be a little
That's
bit better,
okay.
but anyway, I was like,
Hey,
yeah, we're here
it
now.
happens. Good. Well, welcome to the show. I am Amy Schmidt. I am the founder of Fearlessly Facing 50, and I'm the host of Your Confidence Connector. a show where we can really get into some deep conversations and dig into topics that are top of mind for so many people and share tangible takeaways that we can do. And today's conversation is so great, Hannah, because, and lots of people are joining now. I'm so happy to have them come back on and be patient with us on this Monday morning, right?
Yeah.
Hannah Oertel is the founder of Delay Cell Phones. I have read about you. I've done some research, of course, with John Haidt's book coming out, Anxious Generation. This is once again top of mind. You know, we talk about the differences of mental health for our kids, not just for our teens and tweens, but also for our young adults that have had, you know, cell phones as part of their life. So let's dig into this and find out some ways that we can really support as parents, or maybe some grandparents that might be watching, or if there's young adults watching, or teens that might be off of school today on spring break and tuning in. What can we do to get more connected in such a disconnected world?
Yeah, so I think that obviously, exactly like John Haidt says in his book, we've gone very quickly from a predominantly play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood in really just the blink of an eye. It's just over 10 years that this has happened. And so I think that, well, where the situation a lot of parents are in, you know, they think, I don't want my child to be the only one, you know, without a
Yeah.
smartphone. And also they want to make sure that their child's safe. You know, they want to make sure that they're going to be able to track their child. They want to be able to speak to them when they're on the bus to school, things like that. And so I think that we're in a sort of place where people aren't aware, first of all, of the research about what the harm that smartphones and social media are having on kids, but also they're completely unaware of the alternatives. You know, so a lot of the times I'll bring out these flip phones from my bag, and people are like, "Oh wow, let me have a look at that
Look
retro
at
device." You
that.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They don't realize that these things are even still available. You know, they think you bought one from 20 years ago from eBay or something, but you know, there are a lot of brilliant devices that are available for kids. And so I think that, like anything else in life, we have a sort of staggered approach, you know, these stepping stones. This isn't a no phones campaign. It's just what's the right device and what's the right
Yeah.
time. And what we see happening at the moment is kids' first phones tend to be old iPhones from drawers that are just, you know, in the kitchen, that, you know, it's our phones that we've sort of upgraded
Right.
from, that are just left behind. And they say, oh, well, they already know how to use that. So they end up using it, you know, like a little iPad at home first. And then that ends up becoming their phone, rather than parents intentionally choosing what's the right device for my child.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's such an interesting thing. Now, I have older kids, and I wanted to share a story because I lived in Europe for a long time with our kids, and I see a couple people on here that
Mm-hmm.
that I'm friends with that lived abroad with me, and it was interesting because when we repatriated back to the U.S., my oldest daughter was going to college. This was in 2015. My middle kid was going into 10th grade in high school in the U.S. system, and my youngest was going into middle school. And, you know, social media and phones in Europe, I loved it because
Mm-hmm.
we didn't see it. I mean, we were out at restaurants and there were not phones out. There were people
Yeah.
engaging in conversation. When we came back to the US, it was like fast forward. And I think my 10th grader was most affected by it because he had not had a phone in Europe. And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden, and social media, we just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It just was not part of our usual cadence. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember a good friend of mine saying, "Oh my gosh, your kids aren't texting?" And I was like, "No, they're
Mm-hmm.
really not." So we were really behind. And then they had to catch up in this crazy world. And I see it now. I see it with my oldest, who is 26, compared to my youngest, who is 20. My 20-year-old is much more um, in tune on their phone much more often than the
Mm-hmm.
26-year-old. There's a real
Mm-hmm.
change and shift in it.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last 10 years, it's been so incredibly unbelievable. And one of the things, you know, that's been talked about is the fact that in the last 10 years, kids have moved away from play and now
Mm-hmm.
they're addicted to their cell phones. Is that what you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things, is that it's not only, you know, how much time they're spending on phones, which, let's say your kid's spending 2 hours, you know, a day on their smartphones, even though we know the average time is far, far higher
Yeah.
than that. But let's, even if it's 2 hours, you know, that's like a part-time job, you know, that's like 15 hours a week, that what they could be learning, what they could be doing, what skills they could be learning in that amount of time.
Right.
And so I think it's also that which sometimes gets lost in this conversation of, you know, what are all the things they're missing out on. And I think that for me is that yeah, a lot of the time speaking to Gen Z and thinking that they have sometimes quite low resilience for a lot of things in life. And I think they're criticized a lot for that. And I think it's really unfair because they haven't had the same opportunities that you or I would have had, you know, growing up, and all those life experiences, those rites of passage, a lot of those things just haven't been on the table for them because, yeah, as a whole generation, they haven't been doing those kinds of things. And so I think that's why they find it so difficult and they have so much social anxiety and things, is because they're completely ill-equipped and unprepared for life as an adult, you know. And so all those stages that we would have gone through, which help us, you know, transition from childhood to adulthood, they haven't had that chance. And I think that's something that's really, really sad, and I'm very concerned for their generation and for future ones. But at the same time, it's like, because we can see we have that insight that parents didn't have a decade ago, now we need to make a different choice, and they're calling us to as well.
So let's talk about this whole, you know, this whole part of collective action, because that's really what needs to be done. Collective action.
Yes.
It sounds easy, right? It sounds okay. If you ask a kid, if you ask a teen or even a young adult and you say, hey, what would it be like if we just gave up our phones, you know, for 4 hours a day, or if there was a period of time that you just weren't on it, they would all be raising their hands saying, yes, I would love that.
Yeah.
And we as parents are doing the same thing, saying, oh yeah, let's do it. But then nothing happens. How can we get behind this and really make, you know, a collective effort to make this happen? And I know that's what you're really trying to do over there with delay cell phones or smartphones, which is so amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is the situation we're in. So we need to look at our sort of closest community in the first instance. So it's look at, okay, who are the families, who are the people that are the most important to you, and start to have these conversations, you know. So for me, I know yesterday, you know, I went out, you know, with my kids on a hike with some friends, and I didn't have to think, is one of the kids going to bring a phone? Is there going to be, because I know we've all made that choice together. So I know that that's a family I can completely relax with my kids, but it's not going to come up, you know. And so the more families that you can have like that, you then have a much stronger network. You've got people you can go on holiday with, people you can go for dinner with, people where, you know, this is going to be something that isn't going to be difficult. If you've got families around you where one child has a smartphone and then you're out, they pull that out, the kids will stop whatever they're doing and crowd around, what are they looking at on TikTok or whatever. And it's so addictive, that pull, that they are going to be curious, they are going to want to watch that. So I think so it's working with those people closest to you. Maybe it's only going to be a couple of families, you know, initially, but then you want to try and grow that as much as possible. So that's just what you can kind of personally do. Then it's also speaking to your school. So I always think, you know, when I was at school, it was yo-yos were banned, conkers were banned, you know, all these like Tamagotchis, you know, these things that now we think, oh, please bring them back and get the smartphones out of school. So it's ridiculous that something that has so much power to, you know, torment other kids, bully other kids, to put teachers, you know, on edge. You know, it doesn't help our kids academically. It's so distracting. You know, smartphones have no place at all in schools. And so I think if parents really feel they have to have it on the journey to and from school, okay, then they need to be lockers or pouches that they go into, you know, as soon as they arrive, so they basically don't come into the building. But so I think that, so speaking to your, you know, your parent council, your PTA, speaking to your head teacher and just saying, look, this is what the data shows. You know, I do not want my child to be in a position, you know, where they have smartphones in school. Like, how can we work together on this? It's in the school's interest. Speak to teachers. You know, they all say, please give us that opportunity to teach, because if kids are watching Netflix behind their textbooks in a lesson, I mean, how difficult is that for teachers? So I think, and then it's, you know, looking at your communities, you know, around you. Are you part of a church group? Are you part of a scout group? Are you part of any other kind of groups where you can say, let's get a few families here, let's get a few families there? And again, so sort of trying to work with this collectively. And then it's also looking at that kind of, you know, the government, the legislation level, you know, speaking to your local politicians, and just sharing your views on this. How can you help us? And so I think that, it's schools, government, parents, you know, all working together. But I think that we are at a point where everyone is unhappy with this situation.
Yes, absolutely.
From the studies where even where they've, as you said, asked older kids, would you prefer that there was no TikTok? They're all like, yes, but only if no one has it.
Right.
They realize this stuff is, no one feels good when they've been on their phone for 5 hours. You don't just go like, oh yeah, I need another 5 hours actually. We all are aware of this, but it's so hard. And when you're the only one, then it is difficult.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate situation now, that if your child is the only one who delays smartphones, if all their peers have smartphones, when they're trying to engage with them, their friends are going to be on their phones. They're going to choose, online social interaction, over in-person interaction every time. And so I think, yeah, that's the unfortunate situation right now. But I think we are getting to that tipping point, and I think we are going to see huge social change over the next 12 months.
I think so too. I think it's been amazing. There really is kind of hopefully that there's a surge going that way. Like, I look at I have somebody that commented on here that it's creeping into their 8-year-old. There are 8-year-olds getting cell phones. There's 8-year-olds. And part of that, I think, is I'd like to talk about this fact that, parents are as obsessed with their phones as their kids. And I recently sat on a panel and we were talking about the fact that I remember coming home from school when I was, young, and we used to have the phones on the wall with the long cord. We had 2 phones in the house, one upstairs and one downstairs,
Yeah.
the landline. And I can remember coming home and my mom would be talking to somebody on the phone. And I remember her kind of saying, like, wait a minute, and that was just I can remember that, and it made me feel one disconnected, and like she didn't have time for me right then. Now you look at where you are now, and I mean, parents, even though we're sitting there, and I've certainly done this before, even with older kids, you're sitting there and all of a sudden something comes up and you're looking away. And that just shows them that you're really not the most important person in this conversation. They feel deflated. They feel left out. So parents are a real part of this problem, right?
Yes, yeah, I think so, absolutely. So there's a couple of things there. I think the first thing is that we got smartphones, most of us, when our frontal lobe was fully formed. And so, we, in terms of the addiction that we have, we really had a chance to, experience life without smartphones first. And so the harm on us is much lower. Also, obviously, in terms of our exposure to things and our resilience to be able to cope with that. But also we don't get exposed to things in the same way that kids do. But I think that we have to be much more intentional, about our smartphone behavior. And so a lot of parents, I'll just say, in the first instance, never ever have your phone in your bedroom. Just don't. Most adults will charge their phone next to their bed. So it's the very last thing they'll look at before they go to sleep, the very first thing when they wake up. And so we want to have, at the end of the day, when you've decided, okay, I'm sort of no phone time, whether it's 9 o'clock or whatever, you plug it in, charge it in the kitchen. And then when you wake up in the morning, it's get an alarm clock. They are quite affordable,
Right.
Have that next to your bed. And so then when you wake up, you can be, again, more intentional. First have your coffee, first greet your family, first, think about your day before you then just go straight back into that. And again, I think when your kids are coming to you and trying to get your attention when you're on your phone, which they're going to do, and often, it's important things we're doing, it's not like we're just necessarily scrolling through social media, but I think it's expressing to them, this is what I'm doing. Right now, when they're coming to me, I'm like, I'm just looking at the map of the place where we need to go right now, and then I'm going to get off it again, or whatever it is. I'm transferring some money so we can do this. I'm, booking your train tickets for this. But I think it's when we just go like, well, don't even do that, just ignore them and just carry on. Then I think that's where they feel I'm not important. Whereas when they come to you, if we straight away give them that eye contact, explain what we're doing and saying, oh, I'm going to get right back to you, but this is what I'm doing right now, then that just, that is really helpful, I think, for them. But at the same time, I think that as much as possible, we want to get everything off our phones and onto our laptops.
Right.
So putting our social media, our WhatsApp, whatever we need, onto our laptop, and try and really look at the apps that we have on our phone. What do we really need on it? Is this an app that is actually going to be useful for us in our life, or is this something that's going to take from us? And so we always want to look at our smartphones and think, this is useful, this is my banking, this is my weather, this is something that's going to make things easier for me, or is this something that's going to take from my life? And sort of, we can quite easily look at each app and think, okay, this is something that's not going, this is something that's going to steal from me. And so, yeah, the more that we can do that. And one last thing that I think we can also do, if you feel you really want to keep your smartphone, it is, we can sometimes use it as like a mini iPad at home, and then put your SIM card in a more simple, basic phone, a flip phone, and then you can use that outside of the house. And so that you still have an iPhone, but you don't need it actually, you just use it while you're at home. And that can be better too.
That's interesting. I think about the times when I look at my app and it says your screen time's down 74% or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's like rock star status for me. I'm like, yes, because a lot of my business I have to do, on social media and things, but it makes you feel so
Yeah.
good. It
Yes,
does.
it
It's like, okay,
does.
I've
Yeah.
actually spent other time engaging with other people and in conversations. Let's walk
Yeah.
through a couple of scenarios for the people, because there's lots of people that are still joining. I've got Hannah Oertel on from Delay Cell Phones. I'm Amy Schmidt, and we're talking about the fact that, cell phones are really linked to some mental health issues for our kids, and why it's so important to delay this and allow them to have more of a childhood than we're letting them have right now. Let's walk through a conversation. If someone comes home and say they're in year 9, year 8, something like that, middle school, let's say U.S. middle school, and they come home and say, Mom, I'm the only one. I'm the only one that doesn't have a cell phone. We've talked about this, and say you're a parent that's had the conversations and kind of gone through these things and said, hey, this is why we've made this choice. And they're coming to you now and saying, I'm missing out on things. Some assignments are on there. Kids are interacting about school projects. How do you answer that?
Yeah, so I think that in the first instance, it's looking at, a lot of the time kids will say, I need it for
Right.
schoolwork, I need it for these things. I would get clarity on that from the school, because a lot of the time they will use that as a reason, not to say we don't trust our kids, but we also all remember what it was like to be teenagers, and you'll do anything to kind of, get what you want. So I think, yeah, getting confirmation from the school and what's really required. This isn't a no tech campaign, so we don't want kids to grow up being complete Luddites. This is, yes, have a family laptop at home, get whatever apps they need for their education, you can have that on the family laptop, that's fine. And again, if it's things about communications in the UK, we often have, all my football team are in a WhatsApp group and I'm not in it, so I'm missing
Right.
out. WhatsApp is something that is, particularly dangerous for kids, so it's not something that I would encourage at all. But again, if you're going to have it, then have it on a laptop, something which you can is much easier for you to monitor as a parent. And then at the same time as well, being the only child, yes, that can be difficult for sure. But I was speaking to a mother in the States actually about a month ago, and she said, so she delayed with her son until 16. He's now in his first year of college, university, and he'd come back at Christmas, and he said to his mum, so at the time, he was the only one, and it was difficult.
Yeah.
But he came back and he said, just being around all my peers, they're really, really struggling. I just can't believe how much they're not coping, living alone and being at university and having a lot of mental health issues. And he said, I just realized that I never actually thanked you, because it must have been really difficult. And thank you for not giving me a smartphone. And
Wow.
because he's absolutely thriving now, and I just think this is one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children, delaying. No one's going to come back and say, why didn't you give me a smartphone, a bit earlier? And I think, again, that's why we have to do this with other people. Find those other families who are also delaying. I mean, I am very intentional now about who we invest time in as families. And if people are like, we're definitely going to give our kid a smartphone, it feels to me like we've just got different values as families. And so I'm going to invest more in the families where I know essentially my kids are going to be safe from that kind of stuff, and we're going to have want to do similar things. So I think you can find them, but it may be that they're not right in the school community. You may need to find them, but I would really look for that, even if it's just one other peer that they can have. I think that can make it a lot easier, because exactly. And it is difficult. I see that if they are the only ones. The other things that I would say is, when you have kids over to your house, if everyone's got phones, then you can just say, in our family, we all put them on the kitchen table when you're playing, whatever it is, so that again, then they can have some real play where they're really,
Yeah.
with real human connection, rather than it being, because that's the thing, even when they're together, they'll end up like texting each other when they're sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Because they will choose that
Yeah.
connection. Yeah.
I remember years back, and now it's been at least probably 10 years, and it was a bachelorette party. I just remember I was there with I wasn't at the bachelorette party, but we were observing this group of young women, and they were having the time of their life and, having a great time, but yet they were all on their cell phones. Here you're surrounded with the people most likely that are most important in your life if this is a bachelorette
Mm-hmm.
party. And here they are all, they really weren't
Mm-hmm.
connecting. They were disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Let's walk through what a contract could look like, because I think that, I talk about all sorts of things with parenting young adults, and we talk about contracts, maybe if young adults are moving home after college, what this looks like. So there's contracts for all different stages of
Mm-hmm.
parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about some good takeaways for a parent watching today that might have a child that's still school age. So anywhere
Mm-hmm.
between, up to the age 16, let's say something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What does the verbiage look like in that contract, and what conversation
Mm-hmm.
starter do you have around that contract, around
Mm-hmm.
that, around this contract and how we make it?
Yeah. So, we say delay smartphones until at least the age of
14.
14, and social media until at least the age of 16. So people sometimes think that's, oh, you're 14 now, here's an iPhone out of the box. It's not that at all. It's still, I say hold out as long as you can for both. But what the first thing you want to be asking is, what's your child's maturity like around other devices? So if they've got an iPad, if they're on the TV and you say, okay, it's time for dinner, we're going out, whatever it is, turn that off. How mature are they able to do that? So if you say you've got 10 minutes more, are they able to stick to those kinds of boundaries? If that's something they're really struggling with, I wouldn't expect it's going to get
Right.
easier if you give them a smartphone. And then in terms of giving them a smartphone, again, that's why I would first start with an alternative, a flip phone, a basic phone, and you still want to have rules even when you're giving that phone. So no phones in the bedroom at night. This is the drawer that they go in. When we have family meal times, then we don't have phones at the table. Maybe we all go out for dinner, or when we're in restaurants, when we're meeting other friends, phones stay at home. So it's working out for your family, what are the times that are kind of sacred, and when do you really want to connect with each other? And so I think, starting with that, with a basic phone, and if you've got quite good boundaries there, and they've got
Right.
used to that, then when they get a smartphone, it's going to be the same kind of thing. So I think you want to be looking at, okay, now you're getting a smartphone, so it's going to be no social media. Maybe we're going to have take the app store off. There's going to be no access to the internet with it, but you're going to have your calendar on it. You're going to have your banking. You're going to be able to have your bus tickets, whatever that is. And so I think being clear that this is a trial period, and it's always a kind of a trial period,
like
so
that
we're
word.
saying, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to try this out for 2 weeks. Let's see how you go. These are the things, we're both signing it. So and then if you find out, oh, they've taken their phone to their bedroom, okay, it seems like we're not quite at the maturity level to be able to deal with this, so we're going to take it back a step. You're going to get the Nokia back again. We'll try again in 2 weeks, and then we see how that goes. And then as they show more maturity, then it's it's giving more it's giving more freedom then with that phone. But I think the thing I hear a lot from parents is, we have to be able to trust our children. We have to be able to trust them, with their smartphones, and not check it and things like that. The thing about that, this is actually, you can trust your child so much, and they'll still end up, seeing all kinds of horrible things online, because it's about what other people and the algorithms and all of that, what they can be exposed to. So your child can be very, very trustworthy. It doesn't mean that they're going to have a positive, healthy experience with their smartphone and social media. So there is a huge amount of naivety among parents. So for what you and I will see on Instagram, because of the algorithm and the generation that we are in, we will have a very different experience compared to an 11-year-old boy. And I think that's the thing that a lot of parents aren't aware of, because they'll say, well, I've got this app, it's just this and this and this, and you're like, for you, yeah.
Right.
But also Meta will invest a lot more in our age group, making sure that we don't see harmful content, so they know that for a 7-year-old they can invest the least, because it's just it doesn't matter in terms of their user base. So I think that yeah, that's definitely something that is very easy to kind of overlook, because, and I always say to parents, first, if you want to give your child Snap, for example, download it on your phone first, put in all the details as if you're that age and your own child, use it for a week, engage in the way that you think they would engage, then evaluate after that week and see if you think that's an app that you want your child to have. Because otherwise, if you say, I've got it, it's fine, I'm saying, no, but you're seeing it from your perspective and how the algorithm, wants you to view it. So you have to really experience it from a child's perspective. And then obviously you often will see the content, it's horrific, and you think, no way am I giving this to my kid. But yeah,
Frightening.
so
I mean, that is the algorithm. I think of what I see compared to what other, what younger kids and young adults are seeing. It's very different. Let's go through two different conversation starters. The first one, Hannah, because I love all this information you're sharing, is for maybe a parent of a child that might be 10 and between the ages of, let's say, 8 and 10. Okay. And let's talk about, I always feel it's important to give your kid a little power, give them a little skin in the game, is what we say over here in the US. Give them a little something, a little leverage around it, so that you do show that you trust them. What's a good conversation starter around that if they come to you and say, I'm ready? I mean, everybody's got one, mom, and this is what I want.
Yeah, so I mean, just this week just gone, I was just in a conference, and Google, they just presented some new research that 9 is the average age globally that kids are getting
9.
smartphones. So it's just becoming younger and younger. It's just horrific. But I think that, yeah, again, with that, I would say, if they're going out on their own, then maybe it is okay, now it's time for you to get a watch. That's what I would say start with in the first instance, is the watch. My kids don't have a watch, and they're 9 and 11, because I don't want something that's attached to them all the time. So different parents will have different things, about this. But so we have a family Nokia that they can use when they're going to the library on their own or something. They will take that. So it doesn't belong to anyone. It's the family's, it's mine, right. But this is something that they can use then, if they're out and it's, something they need to call me or say we've arrived, so it doesn't have a tracker on. That's just my personal thing. I know some parents, that's really important to them. So I think that, yeah, but having some kind of a device like that, that they can start to use when they're going out on their own, I think is okay. And maybe it's also like helping them use the internet more. So my 9-year-old daughter, also just due to me being so overwhelmed with all of this, she now does the weekly food shop online, which has just been great for me because it's a massive help. I'm like, you look through the cupboard, see what we need. But so that kind of thing, which gives a lot of independence. She's on the internet, she's typing everything up, she's got to write down the things, but she absolutely loves it, that it's her responsibility. And of course, sometimes she orders things the wrong thing, and but it's like, then when the delivery comes, she's like, oh, look, this is all the stuff that I ordered. Obviously I check through what she's getting, but I think so we can give independence in other ways. And I think John Haidt talks about this as well. And from, the book Free Range Kids, is that, kids are being so overprotected in the physical world and underprotected in the virtual world. And so some of their friends might not be allowed, for example, to go to the cinema on their own. But as a 9-year-old, you might think, okay, this is the time when you can go to the shops for me, which is just in walking distance. You can go and get me some milk. You can go to the library on your own. You can, I know often in the States, everything's like drivable, but where we are in the UK, there are a lot of things within walking distance. So, but it might be, you can go to the park on your own. You can take the dog out on your own, thinking about what are the things that actually, looking back to your own childhood, that you had responsibility for, and the things that they're capable of. And sometimes even chores that we'll think, oh, it's too much to put on them, or actually they want it, they're ready for it, and they take a lot of pride, especially if it's like we give them the same job. This is your responsibility to keep the bathroom clean, whatever it is, that actually then they're like, this is my contribution, my responsibility. And I think that cooking meals, basic meals, that kind of thing as well, get them a kid
Yeah.
cookbook, ask them Tuesday nights is going to be the meal that you're cooking, what are the ingredients you need, and then just let them have it at the in the
That's giving
kitchen.
them some
Those
independence and exactly skin in the game. It gives them some
definitely
power other than holding
definitely
their phone. I think that's
exactly
wonderful
yeah
suggestions. I
yeah
had a grandma write in a while ago because they knew I was covering this topic. And she's struggling because she has grandkids that will come and stay with her. And sometimes after
hmm
school, she picks up the kids from school or whatever. And they do have smartphones and they're on them, and
hmm
it's been communicated to her, and that's why she was feeling bad about it, was that
hmm
she's boring, she's that there's nothing to do
hmm
at grandma's, there's nothing to do, so they sit on their phones, and this woman is
hmm
really having a hard time connecting with her grandkids.
hmm
I
hmm
wanted to pose that to you, just to make you think about it, but also just some advice for someone that might be taking care of their grandkids, and their grandkids are on their phones, and does she have the
hmm
power to say, you're in my house now, put them away? I mean, those
hmm
are tough
hmm
discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, with that, I would say, speaking to, her child, the parent, and saying, being really open about this and saying, what can we do? The sad thing is that, so from studies, for kids who are really addicted to their phones, which, the majority of them are, especially if it's over about a year that they've had them, when you first try and take the phone away, does cause a lot of stress.
Yeah.
It causes a lot of anxiety, and they really, they feel that they're missing something. It's an extension of their body. They want their phone back. But in all the studies, when they've left it longer than like a week, then they're all delighted, and they're like, oh, like going to camp, things like that. They're like, I don't even miss it. I shouldn't be on it so much. But so it's difficult if they're then, coming to grandma's house, and then, oh, you've got to get your phones away. They may even resent her even more and feel like this is even worse. Now we have to do things. But at the same time, I would say, if she's caring from that for them, and they're in her house, it's her rules, and if they don't like it, well, then the parents can find some other childcare. I mean, I would be quite, strict with that. When other kids come to our house, if they've got phones, we don't have other kids coming here with phones right now. But I think that I would absolutely be clear that we're not going to be on phones,
Yeah.
So I think that, and for her, I mean, I think it's just getting them outside, just doing things with them, going for walks, baking, whatever. And if they find that boring, then hopefully after time, they won't, and again, I think it's, again, giving them that independence. It's like, okay, you want to make a cake, what kind of cake do you want to make? Let's go and get the ingredients, you choose, you find a recipe, let's go and do this. So giving them some autonomy, but supporting them to have that independence.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the time is where kids really, really thrive. They want it. But I think that most parents also can relate to saying, oh, let's go for a walk, let's go for a hike, and they'll say, oh, I don't want to go, it's so boring,
Yes.
no,
Hear it all the time.
but then you get out, and then after 10-15 minutes, they're off running ahead, having the time of their lives. And they're often the ones who are like, we don't want to go yet. So I think that it's just remembering that as parents, that initial resistance, just pushing through that. It's okay to kind of drag your kids along for something that is good for them. And that's something, actually, one of the pushbacks that I hear from parents is like, oh, but they love their phones, they want to be on them all the time. It's like, yeah, but can't you see that in itself is an issue? If they want to be on their phones all the time, then probably it isn't great. So I think, just remembering what we did on our own child, because a lot of people will say that, well, I don't know what they should do, that they don't want to do
Yes.
anything.
They
And
don't
so
want to
it's
do
just,
anything. Yep.
yes, yeah, which when you've got something that's so addictive, like that is true. And we crave human connection.
Yeah.
That's what we want, which is why the smartphone giving us that constant quick hit is so dangerous for humans. But so we can see that and then think, well, how can we connect in a real way with them? And I think, grandma's house is a place where you can kind of bend the rules a bit, do things that maybe wouldn't be allowed at home, but think of I don't know, teach them to play poker or
Exactly.
something.
I remember when my kids used to say, I'm so bored. And I would say, well, there's a couple
Yeah,
bathrooms to clean. I mean, there are a couple
yeah,
things to do around here.
yeah.
Let's just talk quickly about attention span. Now, I don't have the data on this, and I'm not a physician, so I don't know how to support it, but I have heard it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
just like Ted Lasso used to say, we have the attention span now of what, a goldfish. There
Yes.
is truth around the fact that our attention span is so much less because of the
Hmm.
instant gratification, the instant, all of that. Have you seen research around that?
Yes, definitely. So what's happened basically, again, this is because kids are getting smartphones before their frontal lobes form. So that fully forms around the sort of mid-20 age mark. And so when we have when we get a notification, when we get a like on a post on social media, whether it's a notification from a group chat, anything like that, we get that little dopamine hit. And so we are, literally creating new neural pathways in our brain. So we've seen from brain scans physical changes from children's brains when they're given, a smartphone, social media earlier. And so they are just being primed to want that hit over and over again, in the same way that we would have gambling. If you do a sort of slot machine, the absolute, crack of the gambling industry, it's like often you're not going to win. You're not going to win, but sometimes you will. And so when we sometimes get it, then that's the thing that keeps us just hooked so much more. When we get a notification, we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know who it's going to be from. We don't know, is it going to be a message? Is it going to be a like? Which app is it from? Is it from our email? And so we get that same little rush, even in just a very, very small way,
Right.
even as adults. But for children, when they're getting that, so it really does turn them into little addicts. And so when they're having that, and that is creating a deep valley, in their brain of that neural pathway. And so they just want more and more and more of that. And so what happens is that then their attention span, when they're going to watch a movie or sit through a lesson, they're just like, they're used to that constant distraction. That's why we see all the shorts, it's the reels,
Yes.
it's YouTube shorts, all of those tiny short form videos which auto play, are just the absolute worst for children's brains, because it's just like, they can just scroll more, and it just auto plays. And so with that, but then we need to do things like deep work, where we can work for hours with no notifications on, and really get into something, because we know that every time we're distracted, it can take a long time for us to get back, deeply into that topic. And so with kids, we know that it's like hundreds of notifications they're getting per day. So I think it's something like maybe 2 to 3 minutes is the average amount of time that they're getting without having a notification in their whole sort of waking hours. And we know that kids are waking up in the middle of the night to check their notifications and things like that. So I think this is the distracted generation, and again, it's not their fault. This is something that
We are too.
we've
I
done.
mean, it's
Yeah,
parents are very distracted. So, Hannah, I love this conversation.
absolutely.
You've done such a
Yeah,
great job of moving the
thank
needle
you.
on this and opening the discussion around this, and you're making people more aware. I mean, we've all talked about it. We've all said we need to do this. Well, now's the time to do it,
Yeah.
right? Take action. And what
Hmm.
you've given us today are some great, helpful hints of, just a contract, discussions. And really, it is about conversations. It's about having
Hmm.
conversations with your kids, no matter what age it is,
Hmm.
and talk
Hmm.
about, hey, this is how I'm feeling, how are you feeling about this? And that's where
Hmm.
your guard comes down, and you feel more open to talk about it. But we have to make choices, and we have to make decisions
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
their best interest. So I really applaud what you're doing. How can people
Thank you.
get involved with you, reach out to you, and connect with you if they want to learn more and get involved?
Hmm. Yeah, and so just one thing I would just quickly add in there. I think that it's really important to have these conversations with kids, but also, with other parents. And I think that when we go from the kind of attitude of just telling people, you've got to delay smartphones, you've got to delay smart social media, we hate being told what to do. So we straight away get our kind of defensive guard up. So what I would suggest other parents, start having these conversations, with other parents, and just ask people, how are you feeling about smartphones and kids? Do you have concerns about this? This is something that really worries me. Have you seen this website? Have you seen this research? Because this really freaks me out. Like, do you feel the same? And by opening it in that kind of conversation, people are much more receptive. They feel much less judged, and they're more open to actually having these conversations. And that's what we really want, because we know it's a huge lack of awareness on the research and on the alternatives. So the website is delaysmartphones.org.uk, and we're also Delay Smartphones on social media. So you can just follow along there. And then we have our pledge, and then also you can become a volunteer ambassador if you want to in your own school, get your own pack of research cards, to have these conversations with other parents.
I think that's fabulous. I applaud you for what you're doing. I hope you're taking
Thank
time for
you.
yourself in this, because
Yeah,
I know, as someone who's leading a charge and
yeah,
running as a solopreneur and doing all of this, sometimes you have to carve out some time for
yeah,
you. So I hope you're doing that as well. But you're brilliant.
yeah.
You're working so hard at
Thank
this, and
you.
you're making a huge impact. So thank you
Thank
for taking
you
time.
so much, Amy.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
Okay, all
it.
right. Take care.
Have a great week. Thanks
You
everybody for
too.
joining.
Bye.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see you
thank you, everyone.
soon.
Bye.